Today, on the aesthetics of marketing success, I'm thrilled to welcome Meghan Shore, founder of Shore Law, a nationally recognized trial attorney who specializes in medical records, audit trails, and HIPAA compliance. With offices in Illinois, Ohio, and Maryland, Meghan combines her deep litigation experience, having secured major verdicts and settlements, with her role as a consultant on EMR systems and audits. She speaks regularly on legal risks that many wellness and aesthetic practices overlook, especially around patient data, marketing, and privacy. Meghan, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining. I'm excited to dig in on how med spas and wellness businesses can stay compliant and protect themselves.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So we're going to jump into some of the questions. To start off, can you just give me like a little background on how you got into like specifically working with electronic medical records and like HIPAA compliance from a legal standpoint?
Yeah. So I'm a personal injury lawyer. So my focus is medical malpractice and nursing home abuse and neglect, wrongful death. And part of doing that is looking at a plethora of medical records. And it was really frustrating to me when I would take depositions of defendant healthcare providers. They would lie or I would know they're lying, but I didn't necessarily know how to prove it. And, data is it's black and white information that you can't argue with. So I started really getting into actually electronic medical record auditing. So where you can look at metadata and see when someone deleted something, what did it originally say, or, if someone said they looked at a CT scan, I can find out, were they in there? So I really started exploring that area. And now I do that in addition to being a trial lawyer, I'm also a consultant for other lawyers in that area, as well as I help other facilities too. So quality assurance. And I work with the attorney general as well to help audit facilities that are under investigation.
Oh, very cool. It's interesting how you kind of took that route from there.
Yeah.
For like aesthetic and wellness business owners, a lot of them don't realize the full picture when it comes to legal, right? They're not lawyers. What are some common HIPAA mistakes you've seen practices make? Or what are some things that you have seen that we can kind of point out for people that might not be aware of even what some common mistakes are?
So the two big things I see are when people do not get written consent, not only to take that individual's photo, but to post it to their social media. Those are two components. A lot of med spas, healthcare providers will get a written consent for taking a photograph, but then they don't get consent for posting it on their marketing. The other thing is social media. A lot of nurses, I see them posting, from like a nurse's station or in the office, something that they think is fun and cute. And there's medical records in the background or a list of patients listed. And even if you and I can't see that from like TikTok or Instagram because it's too small, that is still a HIPAA violation because someone could enlarge it and find out that information. So those are a lot of the things that I see. Another issue that I see is like with Google reviews.
Okay.
So you'll see sometimes where someone will leave a review that is not a waiver of them saying you can violate HIPAA. All right. When you respond back to that review saying thanks is perfectly fine. But if you say something like thanks for coming in, that is technically a HIPAA violation. So those are the big things that I really see.
That's awesome. That's a good one. And yeah, the Google reviews is a huge one. We see that a lot as well too. And the images is interesting because I think a lot of people think once they have consent that consent probably goes for everything, but I didn't realize that you would have like a separate consent or probably whatever their consent has to include social media in it too, right? Does that sound
You want to be as detailed as you possibly can,
okay?
right? Because you want to protect all. But like the issue too is a lot of people don't understand that HIPAA is not just about medical records. It's actually about a patient's protected health information, PHI. That's actually a coined term in the statute. And that means anything that has to do essentially with the patient's health. So it could be billing, it could be even like your electronic medical record system if there's alerts or warnings, scheduling, anything whatsoever, photographs, that is all HIPAA protected.
Awesome. Yeah, that makes sense. And I don't think a lot of people are aware of everything. I think they're aware of what HIPAA is, but just how wide it kind of spans. Thing that I don't think people understand is the seriousness of it because everyone hears about HIPAA, but not everyone knows someone that has been sued for a violation. Um, can you walk through what typically leads to those lawsuits or what business owners can learn from? I want business owners to understand the seriousness of this because I think a lot of people think, oh, that won't happen to me.
Right. Until it does, and then you're screwed, right?
Until it
So,
does.
and nobody ever intends on wanting to like break the law or get sued. I mean, ordinary people at least.
Right.
But well, with HIPAA, so HIPAA is a federal statute. It's a federal law. Okay. So what that means is it's not necessarily a state action, meaning in Illinois, you cannot necessarily sue someone for a HIPAA violation. In Missouri, you can, and there's several other states you can't. You can't actually get sued for a HIPAA violation. What you can get sued for is things like neglect. So neglecting to protect those records or information, invasion of privacy, or even emotional distress, like what happened as a result of releasing that information. What you can get in big, big trouble for, and this should be even scarier than a lawsuit, is no matter what state you are in, the Office of Civil Rights can fine you for a HIPAA violation. And they can do that by finding out on their own or by the patient or someone who knows the patient, whether it's a lawyer or even a spouse or a friend, can file a complaint. It's really easy to do. You literally just go online and file a complaint. So anybody can do it. And the penalties for doing that are huge, like 7 figures. Okay. And the severity of that penalty depends on what safeguards did you have in place to prevent that from happening. How serious was the neglect that led to this information being leaked?
It's great. I like distinguishing between the two because the idea of getting sued, as you mentioned in the beginning, is a little bit different, but the fine that comes with violating HIPAA, that's where really you can get in trouble. Even just how we refer to it as being sued or just being fined. You mentioned a little bit about the electronic medical records, the scheduling. Most of the aesthetic and wellness business owners that we work with, they see have CRMs, they have scheduling, they have EMR, electronic medical records, which all have patient health information in it. Now, in the CRM side, which the marketing teams like myself work with more, they maybe haven't been identified as a patient yet, right? They still have to opt in because of SMS rules and things like that. But once they become a patient, right, and they're brought in, there's a service provided, a treatment provided, cash-based, insurance-based, they're now becoming a patient. At that point, you can't take that information out and put it anywhere. So is there anything on the EMRs or even their CRMs that they should be looking to stay compliant with that they might not be aware of?
Of course. Well, so first and foremost, before like even diving into CMRs, the most important thing that needs to happen is proper training and policies and procedures in place to avoid any issues from happening. And then those policies and training obviously need to involve how are you using the software and the system to make sure that the patient's information is protected. When you're looking for a good system, you want to make sure that it has encrypted email. So it cannot be just like sending random emails out because it has patient protected health information in there. So you want it to be encrypted. A lot of these systems have the ability to send email and integrate with your Gmail or whatever it is that you use. Also, you want to make sure that it has a system for secure chat, meaning like a HIPAA protected chat. You do not want to be texting any information that is a violation. And then you definitely need to have good cybersecurity insurance, by the way. Everybody should have that. Us lawyers even have it in the medical malpractice arena as well. You want to make sure that CRM can filter who has access, meaning like the person who's your receptionist does not need to be able to see the medical records. So having those security settings where you can decide who can see what is extremely important. So like having that endpoint security. And then the last thing, which a lot of people don't know about, is so with HIPAA, if you're using electronic medical records, which you should be, all right, when I see people with handwritten notes in any type of medical setting, that is a red flag to me. We are in a day and age where everything should be electronic.
Right.
But because you're opting in to do electronic charting, there's actually legislation that was passed by President Obama back in like 2004, I believe, that if you have an electronic medical record system, you are required to have some form of auditing in place. So that system has to be able to produce an audit trail so that you, whoever it is, the business owner or whoever you're delegating to, can actually go in and see who is looking at what when. So that if there is a question of a HIPAA issue, you can find out who that person is. And that is extremely important.
Interesting. Okay. Definitely some good things to look at that I think probably a lot of business owners may or may not be overlooking at this point. You mentioned cybersecurity insurance. Why do you recommend that?
It's getting hacked. Uh, forbid that happens, you're on the hook, even though you've done obviously nothing wrong. We all get those phishing spam emails,
Right.
can, ruin our lives. So it's really important to do that. It's not expensive at all. And I think it's worth, spending the money on that to do that and protect any information you have.
That makes sense. Yeah. That's something I think probably for every industry. Okay. So if you were to get hacked, you could still be on the hook for some type of HIPAA violation because now that data is in someone else's hands. Yeah. We mentioned before and after photos. We talked a little bit about testimonials and how you can respond and not respond. How about when it comes to emails? Because I know what not a lot, but we've seen sometimes is that people are just emailing their client list, right? And they're maybe just trying to talk about specials or things coming up, or even something like, hey, you were in for Botox at 6 months. Would you like to come back? Obviously, you're identifying someone as a patient. Can you talk a little bit about like maybe what the issues would be on just like sending out emails to current patients?
Yeah, well, I mean, the issue is, again, you're putting protected health information in that email. So it needs to be an email that's encrypted. And most software systems have that ability to send an email that is encrypted. It's super easy. It's not any different than when you're sending it from like Gmail or Outlook, for example. So it's really important that you have that because otherwise anybody can access it again. If you get hacked, for example, that's an issue. Anyone who has your password can get in. So we don't want to send it via like a normal email system. That's a huge no.
Yeah, that makes sense. So how about another thing we look at, because I'm trying to come up with things that we see a lot on our end as well too, asking for reviews. So that's another big one as well too, where now they're a patient at this point, right? Or client, depending on, what nomenclature you use. Is there a safe way to ask for a review without identifying them as a patient, even though they are a patient? Because a lot of these clients, the reviews matter, right? They got to get them for Google. You got to get them for SEO. So is there a safe way to, or what is the safest way, I guess, to ask for reviews without putting yourself at risk?
There's nothing wrong with asking for a review. It's just a matter of what you say in your response to that review. What the patient decides to put in their review is up to them. It's their right to do that. If they're waiving any type of privacy benefits under HIPAA, for example. They're not waiving the right for you to go and share their medical information, of course, but they can do that. And that's fine. You should ask for reviews. You all should. There's nothing wrong with doing that. And I always because I'm in medical malpractice, so I'm dealing with the same exact situation as a lawyer. I just always remind my clients, don't, say specifically what you were doing or what you were there for. Just give feedback on the service.
Okay. So it's good. So if a business owner wanted to ask for review, it's okay. Is it okay to, you can text out the review, you can email the review request, but it just has to be like, hey, we're collecting feedback. Would you mind leaving a review? Not, hey, you're in here for Botox. Can you let us know how your experience was? Because now you've identified the service or the treatment that they've undergone. Does that sound right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. That sounds good. I think that's an important one. Okay, so who actually brings the HIPAA fine? We talked about getting sued versus the fine. Who brings the actual fine?
So, like I said, HIPAA is a federal claim essentially, but there are certain states that will recognize it as a civil lawsuit. So, an individual can bring a claim in certain states for a HIPAA violation, but you have to prove in civil court that you've been harmed or damaged by it. So, like severe emotional stress, you lost a job, something of that nature. Then there's that separate action where the government can actually come after you for a HIPAA violation and fine you. But like here in Illinois, we don't have that civil civil cause of action under HIPAA. So instead, and like this is a case that I'll never forget, but we brought a case under emotional distress, neglect, and invasion of privacy. What happened in that case was a young woman, she was 19, was seeing a man that turned out to be married, and the wife found out. And the wife told her best friend. And the best friend worked at a major hospital system. She worked in the lab. And because there wasn't, a filter of what she can access and what she cannot, was able to get into this woman's gynecology records
Yeah.
and found out that she had been treated for an STD and went and told everybody. This is a town of like 4,000 people. It was not
No.
that big. And she was a waitress. So when she would go through, people would know, people were talking about it. She quit her job. She was seeing therapists. She was already traumatized over finding out she's dating a married man. So we brought that up. And, we didn't even have to file it because the hospital knew once they looked at the audit trail, oh crap, this woman really did go in. She's not supposed to. And we're going to get fined potentially millions of dollars for this. So instead, they went and settled the case with us for the client for her emotional distress.
Wow. That's a sad story, but wow, that's crazy. So you as the lawyer brought the suit about the emotional distress. How come there was no issues with HIPAA in that case? Is that because the government just wasn't aware of it or didn't bring it? Or was that what the hospital was trying to avoid by settling?
They weren't aware of it. Certainly my client had a right to make the government aware of it and
Well,
file a complaint with the Office of Civil Rights. I couldn't file it if I had wanted to. And you can simultaneously do both. You're allowed to do both. You're not prohibited from seeking one or the other. But yeah, the government did not find out, and they were able to, confidentiality was part of the settlement agreement, so she wasn't allowed to go in, seek recourse through the government and disclose that HIPAA violation. Instead, she took the settlement because at the end of the day, when you get fined by the government's getting that money, not the person who's actually injured and harmed by it. So that's why, there's the civil versus going through the Office of Civil Rights. When you bring a civil action, you are actually being compensated for the harms that you've suffered. And she did suffer great harm. She was,
God,
I can smell bullshit, right? Like
yeah.
this girl was so traumatized by it all to
Uh,
no fault.
yeah, that's unfortunate. Um, in the case of a HIPAA violation, this might be something because you're more on the civil side, which you just kind of discussed. Do you feel most of the violations are being reported by someone? Or is there some type of regulatory body out there that's literally looking for this? There's thousands of medical wellness and aesthetic practices. I don't think the government has the ability to look at that. If we're worried about getting caught, is it that someone is reporting? Is that how people are getting caught? At least is that your experience?
Yeah. I mean, a majority of the time people are reporting, but there is quality assurance that happens within these facilities, and the facilities do have a duty and an obligation to report it. We all do an ethical obligation and to right the wrong and fix it. So, but yes, most of it is through patient reporting. Just like you can report your information being leaked, you can also report them for them not giving it to you. So for example, if someone says, hey, I want my medical records and they're not getting them, they report to that same entity, the same one that reviews it to fine you. That's called information blocking.
What are some quick wins or maybe some low effort steps that any aesthetic or wellness business owner could take today, tomorrow to strengthen their HIPAA compliance or double check that some things are in place?
Well, like I said, you need to make sure you have policies and procedures on this stuff. So meaning like a policy that just essentially regurgitates what HIPAA says, that you're not allowed to share this information. What kind of information? Because people don't know. Your receptionist isn't going to be as savvy as to what is health information as like a nurse practitioner, for example. So you want to make sure that those terms are identified, and you just want to make sure that there's limited access. Again, like your marketing person doesn't need to have access to the, medical records or, the patient's getting Botox or whatever, so trying to limit access in that way as well. And then again, always do some type of training or like orientation on the topic and make sure you've documented that you've done that training, like have an attendance list and keep that.
Okay. That's great. All great tips. I think things that people need to take a look at one way or another. And it's kind of listening, and now they're realizing, okay, I might need to tighten my system up a little bit. Like, where do they start? Do they call a lawyer? Is this something that we could come to you for? Is there a specific type of person they would talk to? Where do they get started on something like this if they need help?
Yeah, of course. Like, I mean, all of these entities should have some type of attorney that's overseeing the legalities and business aspect to make sure you're in compliance with all of these rules. I mean, as a medical or med spa, there are certain rules and regulations you're required to follow. And so I think everybody should have an attorney that advises them on that type of stuff. But I hate to say it, like ChatGPT is great. And that's not a substitute for judgment by any means. It's just a roadmap to get started. But you can use it to draft these policies and procedures or come up with an employee training manual or even like a step-by-step roadmap of what you need to do to make sure you're in compliance.
That's awesome. So maybe starting with like some AI to kind of get you through there, and then ultimately maybe having some type of counsel like review it or double check some stuff to make sure everything is above board.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's a great tip. Is this something that you help with if someone specifically wanted to speak with you about it?
Yeah, I do help with
Okay.
this. It's not my primary practice. Like I said, I'm a malpractice lawyer, but I do help individuals, make sure they are in compliance with HIPAA, High Tech Act, as well as preventing any issues from happening so they can avoid any type of HIPAA violations as well. As far as like looking at like policies and procedures, I do help with that. That's all something that I can do. And a lot of contract lawyers can help with it as well. There are lawyers that, specifically work in this area exclusively that you can certainly go to as well.
Okay. And if someone wanted to find more information about you, how would they find you?
So you can go to my website, which is shoreinjurylaw.com, or you can feel free to shoot me an email at mshore@shoreinjurylaw.com as well. And, I'm a huge proponent of like helping people find the right person for them too. So I love helping people grow their business. And most of the time that's not with me, that's with someone else. So, I didn't have someone to help me with my business. I kind of felt like fish out of water. So one of my goals in life is to always help other people find that path so it's easier for them. They didn't have to go through what I went through.
That's awesome. Helping other people. That's great. Well, Megan, this is great. Thank you so much. I know this is a topic that not everyone likes to talk about and not everyone is really that knowledgeable about. So I feel like just some of the things that we have here could be super helpful, even if it's just, helping one person out. I appreciate your time. We'll put some of your information in the show notes if people want to reach out. And thanks again for your time. And we'll talk soon.
All right.